Labą vakarą, gerbiami svečiai. Ačiū, kad susirinkote. Aš nedelsiant pereisiu į anglų kalbą, nes paskaita vyks anglų kalba. So, thank you for coming, ladies and gentlemen, to the joint event organized by Vilnius University and Museum of the Lost Shtetl. The lecture and discussion by renowned scholar of the Holocaust in general and Holocaust in Lithuania specifically. I believe it would be not an understatement to say that Christoph Dieckmann, I can add his academic title, Dr. Christoph Dieckmann, is probably a walking encyclopedia of anything which relates to the Holocaust, any questions, any topics which relates to the events of the Holocaust in Lithuania. He will probably correct me, but that is my personal opinion. And I think that the topic which he opted to talk about is very relevant to Lithuania and to Lithuanian society, is facing the past, Lithuanians, Germans, and Jews. So, without giving you too long introduction, I will pass it over to Christoph, and my only wish that today we will have not only the lecture, academic lecture, by esteemed Dr. Christoph Dieckmann, but you will use this opportunity, which is very rare, to have a discussion with him. The aim is to speak, all of us, using the opportunity that Christoph is here, asking questions, and probably questions which all of us are thinking when they're coming up when we are thinking or speaking about the Holocaust in Lithuania. So, Christoph, over to you.
Sergey, is this on? Yeah. So, Sergey, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear university, whoever that is, thanks a lot for the kind invitation. I'm here because there was written Diskussia. Yeah, because lectures we don't need, actually. We can see them online, we can read, yeah, we can read them in books like this. Yeah, I'm here to talk, and this is not a game of questions and answers. This is a question of common searching, common learning. We learn together. Yeah, that's what this is all about. So it's not me being an encyclopedia. There's so many things you don't know how much I don't know. Huge amounts. Now there are others in the room who know a lot about some things of the Holocaust, of the Shoah in Lithuania, much more than I do. Much more. So we're in this together. That's the whole point. Yeah? And what I do know is a little bit about how to do this. Cape Tevika. How did it happen? And what can we take from the process that led to this mass murder? So it's all about Diskussia. So the lecture I prepared are actually notes, which I consider important, relatively short. And then we're going to hopefully, quite quickly, go over into a common discussion about how are we going to deal with our common past, yeah? And what are the problems here we are facing. So, second reason I came was the times of Zoom are coming to an end, hopefully. This is, we are actually sitting together, yeah? And I need the non-physical communication as well, in order to be a good teacher, in order to be a good discussant. Zoom is fine under pandemic conditions, but otherwise it's very challenging for me to do that. I have to teach via Zoom quite often, and it's exhausting, because there's no, the echo space isn't there, yeah, and it is here. So that's why I'm very happy actually to be here, because we actually can sit together in this ancient university and think about the past. So I will present only a few thoughts on history, on memory, and on my own approach. Yeah? And you have to tell me when I talk too fast, yeah? Or I'm not holding the microphone properly. You have to tell me. Yeah?
You have to hold the microphone properly.
I have to talk. Oh, this is different. So why didn't you tell me earlier then?
You didn't ask.
I didn't ask. Okay, good. No? So, and repeat doing that, because I know that. Yeah? Okay. So, first of all, we all know it. No? We have to remind ourselves of what is actually the problem we're talking about. But that was two. Yeah? It's about those crimes. It's all about those crimes that were committed under German occupation on Lithuanian territory. Yeah? It's over 400,000 people were murdered outside of any sort of legitimate warfare. Yeah? That is over 200,000 Jews, 170,000 Soviet prisoners of war, 40,000 evacuated civilians from Soviet territories further east, mostly forgotten, as well as the Soviet prisoners of war, but they do belong into the picture, and 5,000 from diverse groups. Here, ethnic Lithuanians come into the focus, Polish and Russian civilians, Soviet activists, families of those evacuated Soviet functionaries, and civilian victims of the anti-partisan warfare inside Lithuania, gypsies, a few, and mentally disabled, a few. Yeah? So that is this crime poses a question. We want to explain this, understand what's happening here. How are we coping with this one? How do we explain it as historians? And I'm always talking as an historian. Yeah? So that is our problem. Chronology. Yeah? Chronology is always the basis for everything we do. And my take on the chronology is a bit different than the usual take. It's a bit different. Because I say, in the first 5 weeks, till the arrival of the civil administration, at the end of July, we have a murder against 20,000 Jewish men. Yeah? 5,000 in each region, so to speak. In Šiauliai, in Panevėžys, Kaunas, and Vilnius, but 10,000 actually, because Kaunas, Šiauliai, and Panevėžys were still together, administratively. 10,000 in the north, 5,000 in the region of Vilnius, and actually 6,000 in the region of Kaunas. Yeah? Then, at the same time, while those men were murdered, we have a huge wave of ghettoization in the countryside, in the provinces. Yeah? Up to 100 improvised ghettos were erected, with all the country Jews of Lithuania incarcerated, kind of. Yeah? 100,000 Jews. After the murder, maybe 90,000 were left. Yeah? And that's happening in June, July, August already. Yeah? At the same time, meaning a few weeks later, we have selections in the cities going on. Now, while the process of creating the ghettos was going on, and we have selection in the cities in August and September 1941. 11,000 murdered during those selections in Kaunas, 33,000 in Vilnius, a few thousand in Šiauliai in the north. Yeah? So the overall number of Jewish victims until the end of 1941, yeah, and we must not rely only on the reports by Jäger from the Einheitskommando 3. Now he's covering only parts of the territory. Very often, I'll talk about that later. The number which I think is correct is about 152,000 Jewish victims until November 1941. 152,000. Leaving 48,000 Jews in the ghettos and work camps, then added in spring 42 another 8,000 from the territories from White Russia, from Belarus, which were then added to the Lithuanian territory, under German occupation, of course. Then we come to a number of 48,000 Jews living at least relatively in stable conditions until the spring of 1943. When in the south, in the Vilnius district, and then in Vilnius, the ghettos were completely destroyed. And just a few closed work camps were left over. Kaunas and Šiauliai continued to exist until the flight of the Germans, evacuation of the Germans in summer '44. Jews were mostly deported at that stage, at the late stage, to Stutthof, the women and children and men to Dachau. So overall, we find in Europe scattered about 9,000 Jews, I would say, from Lithuania, who survived this tragedy. 9,000. Yeah. So while this happened, we have to be aware of the administration in Lithuania, because there are many, many fairy tales about this, many myths. Yeah. So on paper, this is a picture of a graph of the central administration in Kaunas, which seems to be German. This is strong, organized, tack, 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 tack. Everything is covered. Yeah. But this is only the facade. It's just the surface. This is we see the administration in the middle. We see politics and economy. Yeah. And in each of these departments, there were only 2 or 3 Germans. And they were then supposed to head Lithuanian organizations, be it from ministries. Yeah? For example, the Ministry for Agriculture, the Department for Agriculture, yeah, was heading all organizations from the Lithuanian state, then the Soviet Lithuanian state, being concerned with agriculture. And the exploitation of the land, of the resources, of the agricultural resources of Lithuania was central to the whole attack on the Soviet Union, including the territory in Lithuania. Yeah? So we have only a couple of people in the Department of Agriculture, and they were then heading about 15,000 Lithuanian functionaries working, exploiting the agriculture. Yeah? I will explain it with details on the police, which is now for a short presentation better. So this is just the head of the administrative structure, and everything beneath is not German. It's Lithuanian. Yeah? And that is not unique for Lithuania. That was the case in all over Europe. Yeah? Poland. Yeah? We have in the early years of the 1940s, we have about 7,000 Germans in the whole of Lithuania, of Poland, and 250,000 Polish functionaries working under them. Yeah? And it's the same for France. We have 800 German administrators in France, in the whole of France, of occupied France. Not in the unoccupied part, not in Vichy France, but in the other France. No? 800, that's all. And everything else was left to the non-Germans, to the French in this case. And the French police was the ones deporting the French Jews. Yeah? So it's the same all over Europe, actually. Yeah? So I'm not one of those who try to single Lithuania out. Oh, no, you are the worst because of your ethnicity. This is sheer nonsense. Yeah? The point here is, we Germans were not almighty. We Germans were not almighty, even though we love to think that, but we were not. Yeah? We were not. Yeah. Now, if we Germans had goals to achieve inside Lithuania, how could we achieve them? Yeah? And if not everybody agreed to these wonderful goals, yeah, we could either use force or terror if we have had enough forces. But we didn't. This is about the German police and the Lithuanian police in Lithuania over time. Yeah? So you find that in Kaunas, in the center, we have in average 18 men working in the Gestapo center. 18, that's it. Yeah? In the whole of Lithuania, with all the little posts throughout the countryside, we have about 90 to 100 German policemen from the Gestapo and criminal police and the SD in the whole of Lithuania over time. Not more. Yeah? The mass of the police always comes not from the security police, the political police, but from the ordinary police. The normal police we see each day. Yeah? And here the Germans had 500 in the country, at times mostly 280 to 300 sort of available for services. Yeah? So very tiny number. Now, it's not so tiny when you combine that with the Lithuanian forces. Yeah? It's times political criminal police from the Lithuanian side up to 900. Yeah? meaning German 60 to 100, Lithuanian 80 to 900. Ordinary police, we have 12,000 Lithuanian policemen, January 43, 3,700 in the station ordinary police, 8,000 at a certain point in 20 police battalions in mobile units. Yeah? But one has to add that of those 20 units, at least half of them were mostly outside the country. Now, it was German policy to mix those mobile police battalions from non-Germans. So we find in Lithuania, we find Estonians, we find Latvians, we find Russians, we find Ukrainians. Yeah? We find in Poland, we find Latvians. In White Russia, we find Lithuanians. We find White Russians in Ukraine. Now, so mix it up. Mix it up. That's a good policy of ruling. Yeah? Now, that's the police side. Now, one short remark on the side of the civil administration, so to speak. When in the northern part of Lithuania, in the districts Šiauliai and Panevėžys, I would say the Holocaust began actually there. We have 60,000 victims till September 1941. That is before Babin Yar, which we celebrated. The memory day was yesterday. Now, of the massacre of 33,000 Jews in Kiev and Babi Yar, yeah, we have 60,000 already dead then, by that point in the countryside in Lithuania. 60,000. Yeah? And German civil administrators were, at that point in Šiauliai, were 10. 10. That's it. Yeah? So that's the dimension we're talking about here. Yeah? In Vilnius, meaning the job of the German Gebietskommissar, Hans Gewicke, in Šiauliai, yeah, was, in his job description, you organize the non-German county chiefs. That's your job. Do that. We have 8 Germans there in Šiauliai, and 10 in the Vilna province, 10 in the Vilnius province. Same problem there. No, same problem, same phenomenon there. Now we have to take this seriously. What does this mean for our analyzing this process? What does it mean when we find on the regional level only one Gebietskommissar or one Stadtkommissar, and that's it? Yeah, and almost the whole executive forces were Lithuanians. Now, I'm not talking about initiative here. I'm talking about executing. Yeah? Analytically, we must include levels of power into our analysis. Power and choices. Yeah? Meaning power, and we only understand power if we look at the implementation of politics, of history, what's actually happening. Yeah? So when you look from the top only, just the perspective of Generalkommissar von Renteln, we don't understand anything of what's happening in the country. Yeah? We have to look from the bottom up. No? Not only top down, but also bottom up. Yeah? Otherwise we don't get it. Now, from these figures, which I just hinted at, also becomes clear that the Germans needed the non-Germans to cooperate. They needed them everywhere in Europe. So the task of the occupation was actually to create and to preserve the readiness to cooperate with the Germans, with us. How do we do that? Yeah, because we Nazis, we are not kind people. We want to exploit the continent for our warfare, mostly against the Soviet Union and in the background against the Anglo-American forces. That was a true world war against Americas and the UK, and we need the Soviet Union and the territory and the resources of the Soviet Union to conduct that war. Yeah? That was the purpose of the attack on the Barbarossa, on the Soviet Union at Barbarossa. We need this European continent for the warfare against the UK and America because they are mobilizing, they are arming, and our German time is running down. We don't have much time. We have enormous time pressure all the time, yeah? Starting from 1940. Yeah? So we are very much under pressure here. Yeah? So we can't use instability in our hinterland. We cannot use that. No, it's disturbing us. Our big strategic goals. So we need that. So we need the readiness of the non-Germans to cooperate with us. Yeah? So analytically, we can say at this point already, in the context of non-German, non-Jewish cooperation with the Germans, the Shoah was a German initiative. Yes, 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 yes. The Shoah was a German initiative. Nobody else. Yeah? But unfortunately executed with the help of very many. So it turned then into a European project. The Jews were trapped almost everywhere. And that's key for the Jewish perspective. Jews were trapped. From 1941 onwards, Jews were trapped. And the question, of course, why? Why were they so trapped? Yeah? And it's because the German, non-German cooperation. Just the Germans alone, no way. Yeah? But Germans and non-Germans, trapped. Yeah? So, how was power spread between Germans, Lithuanians, and Jews during those years? And what does that mean for the availability of choices for those groups? Now, those are the analytical questions we need to have in mind when studying this stuff. Those are my remarks on history. Memory. Just a few thoughts. Our memory and our memories, in plural, are not static. They're not something static. Parts of permanent processes. Yeah? Because our memory is a form and an expression of communication, of conflicts and battles of interpretations which are constantly going on and are constantly changing. Yeah? So memory is not something like a hard disk on a computer which you just take. No, it's involved in a constant process of development, which is good and bad. No, it's our chance and it's also our challenge. Yeah? And it's always, memories are always embedded into the social, cultural, and political frame we are living in. Yeah? So how and what we remember and see as memory is influenced by our choices. Which historical events do we consider to have meaning? Yeah? So, second, in each and every society we find pluralistic, varying memories. There's not one society with one memory. Doesn't exist. The wish and the attempt to homogenize memory in a given group, be it a nation state or a European Union, then a union of nation states, can always only be implemented by force. So if memory is centralized, it's a bad thing. Yeah? In Germany we have 300 places, Gedenkstätten, yeah, those memorials all over, and so it's a very decentralized scene. Yeah? And that's a very good thing. It's complicated, and there's a lot of nonsense around, but it doesn't matter, it's decentralized, and that's the good thing. Yeah? So any attempt to centralize this, to homogenize this, is a bad idea. Yeah? And theoretically, there is something like this in the collective memory of Halbwachs. There's a wish to, each people should have one memory. And its actions would be determined by that. I don't think so. I don't buy that. I think it's a fantasy. Yeah? And it's not what it should be like, and it's not what it is. So we have to be aware all the time of the instrumentalization of the past for present purposes. If we want to pursue the questions, what and how are historical events remembered, and what should we not forget, and what should we forget? There are also many things we can forget, yes. It's not we have to preserve everything. No, we don't. We only survive because we forget. Yeah? But there are certain things we have to remember, we must not forget. We should be aware of who is acting. Memory has always people who remember, or who promote certain views. Which group is active in this field? Which groups are active in the field? Yeah? So memories are always an integral part of that's us, and that's not us. Yeah? It's about the creation and fostering of stabilizing traditions and collective abilities to act, about identities and political, historical legitimacy. So the question, what should the state, what should the society we live in look like? Yeah? In which society do we want to live in? That's actually in the background of the memory debates. And we have to be aware of it. So the fundamental issue here is often the basic understanding of nation. Who is included and who is excluded? Yeah? academics amongst us know that, those distinctions. If an ethnic nationalism dominates memory, then the victims of other ethnicities are excluded from our memory. Murdered Jews were then other victims and not our victims, given that non-Jews are acting here, like Germans or Lithuanians. Those murderous crimes were then committed against other people, not our people. Ethnic nationalism is based on jus sanguinis, the law of the blood. Ethnic nationalism, whether you belong to a nation or not, is decided by the answer to the questions: who are your parents and ancestors? To which ethnicity do you belong? What is your language and your culture? A common biological pedigree and a common culture determines the belonging in a nation state based on ethnic nationalism. Now, civic patriotism, the second model, is based on jus solis, the law of the territory, law of the territory, jus solis. Whether you belong to a nation or not is decided by the answer to the question: where were you born? It does not matter who your parents are, which language you speak and which culture you belong to. Your belonging is then linked to your behavior. As an individual, do you adhere to the catalogue of rights and duties or not? Your deeds, instead of your pedigree, is important for your belonging. So one is the French model, and the US model, and the British model, civic patriotism, and the other one is the German model, and mostly Eastern European model. None of that ever existed in pure form. Those are ideal types. They always exist in mixed forms. And the question is how the balance has been sort of put in through the conflict in the society. So we find both phenomena everywhere. And the question is where the Schwerpunkt, where the where the emphasis is being laid, and the conflict of where the society puts the emphasis. So my argument is now that the conflicts over the interpretations of the past are often conflicts between these two different camps, everywhere, between ethnic nationalists and civic nationalists or civic patriots. You find it in a whole lot of nation states, even in America, in Britain or whatever. For ethnic nationalists, it's very hard, actually impossible, I would say, to see victims of other ethnicities as belonging to the same nation. For civic patriots, it's self-evident that citizens with varying ethnic backgrounds and beliefs are seen as victims, which belong to the same nation. It's not even a question. This is a bit too radical, but those are the opposing sides here. And this thought also lies behind the title Musischke from the book Ruta, made together with Ephraim Zurov, published in 2018, right?
16.
16, oh God, 16. Musischke, because Jews belong to us. The murdered victims are not them, they're us. That's the whole point. Now, when we look at the history of remembrance and memory in Europe after World War II, we find that in all European nations, outside the Soviet Union of course, nation states, the memory culture was coined by the ethnic nationalist strand. Everywhere. Even in France, or in Britain. Focused on an ethnic resistance against the National Socialists, the German occupier telling stories of heroism and martyrdom. France would say, we were all resistors. We were heroes, we were martyrs, we were in the resistance. Everything bad comes from the German occupiers and the few who collaborated with them, and the rest is a story of heroism and martyrdom. So small groups of own perpetrators were, yes, condemned, but overall, the own contribution to the crimes in all of Europe committed was minimized, everywhere. We Germans were the role model for this, actually, but I'll come to that in a moment. So France, Netherlands, they all did that. It took many decades. It took many decades until self-critical examinations of the past were taking place, meaning by non-Jews. And that we would question the many apologetic memoirs which were dominating the field. So it were mostly the surviving Jews who would remember and work on the history of the Shoah, and by now we discover in which amazing
which amazing umfang, in which amazing, to which amazing extent this was done in the second half of the 40s. Meaning, everywhere, it took a very long time and many controversial discussions until a more reflective and self-critical consciousness of the past was developed. This is not a Lithuanian specialty. Yeah? There are many masters in Europe. Yeah? So, it took a long time until it was better understood what we Germans tried to do by murdering all European Jews with the help of so many non-Germans. Yeah? Just to illustrate shortly, what's the time? No, it's still good. I showed that last year also, but I want to show it again. Because we Germans, we are not the world champions of Vergangenheitsbewältigung, of dealing with the past. Yeah? This is Auschwitz. The perpetrators in Auschwitz. So we have about over 8,000 men and women working there. Yeah? Being involved in Auschwitz. Auschwitz meaning the annihilation camp and the concentration camp and Monowitz. Yeah? And all of them involved into the mass camps. So how many of them were sent to court? We have 6,500 survivors of those guards, of those perpetrators. 6,500. And now, would you believe that only 9 of them were sentenced for murder? 9! Yeah? 45 were convicted, and among the 9 assessments convicted of murder and sentenced to life on verdicts. That's it. East Germany 12. Communists were not better here. Poland was better. Yeah, and put 800 of them France and convicted 670. That's our German heritage. Yeah? How is the picture overall? Justice in Germany. Yeah? We good Germans. Yeah? So we have overall against 170,000 German persons were subject to investigations because of Nazi crimes. How many were convicted? 1,147 of them were convicted of murder. That's the result of the whole machine. Yeah? So we are not in the position here to tell anybody what to do. We are not in that position. If we do, it's very close often to a colonial attitude. Yeah? We tell the others, no, we are the colonizers here and you better take us as a role model. Don't do that. We don't, no, it's not an appropriate position. Yeah? History of remembrance in Germany. Who were the first victims of Hitler? Who were the first the first victims of Hitler? We Germans, of course. Now this Austrian comes in, and they were brainwashing us. Goebbels, Himmler, Heydrich, and Hitler. Brainwashing us. Maybe the SS, parts of the SS. Okay. But anybody else? No. We had to survive. They were dangerous, you know. If you would be against, they would kill you. Yeah? Now, when you look at Gestapo files, and some people have done that, yeah, in the big cities, Düsseldorf, Würzburg, Nuremberg, that most of the activity of the Gestapo was not done by their own initiative, but because of denunciations by the population. Yeah, I think numbers are between 3 and 7% of the activities of the Gestapo officers in the big German cities was because the Gestapo officers were thinking, okay, we have to do something here, and all the rest was coming from outside. Yeah? So they were embedded in the German society at the time, embedded, and couldn't have done anything without them. Or the almighty Gestapo, no. Just as the Germans were not the almighty occupier, the Gestapo was not the almighty control agency in Germany. No. Yeah? But we like fairy tales more than history, don't we? We like fairy tales more than history. So in Germany, in the German post-war history, you can see how lovely it is to externalize the guilt and the responsibility to externalize the guilt or to keep silent. Those are the two main strategies. Externalize and keep silent. Yeah? And today we know that National Socialism is our problem, our German problem. It came out of the German society. For whatever reason, there are many reasons, but it was a German problem. Yeah? Not from a single little group, which can be then externalized. No. No, it was a collective, the Shoah and all the other crimes were a collective deed. And a Kollektivtat. And we did it. And we as a society have to take responsibility for that. Yeah? And I'm afraid the whole of Europe needs to take responsibility, each one in his own corner, for what happened. In Germany we have, I think the most plausible guess about German and Austrian perpetrators is we have about 250,000. 250,000 German and Austrian perpetrators who were more or less directly involved into the persecution and murder of the Jews. Yeah? And still, even if we could identify them, we need to understand what we might call the chain of responsibilities, the different levels of powers, what made it possible that this tiny group, yeah, of 80 million people, so 250,000 of 80 million, that they could do that. It needed a lot of preconditions that this could function. Yeah? So, that core perpetrators could do their work, it needed a lot of preconditions, so we have to look at the society as a whole. Yeah? And the problem hereby is, of course, that this is often in family history is included. It's not just them, it's us, again. Yeah? Ruther keeps telling the story of all the items, the Jewish items which are in Lithuanian households. Yes, yes, yes. Germany as well. Okay. Last 5 minutes. Aspects of my approach. First of all, this is very simple, but it's fundamental. We are not sitting here as judges. We are not sitting here as judges. Historians are not judges. History is not the judgment of the world. No. Yeah? It's not about accusations, and it's not about judgments, who's guilty to what degree and who's not, but learning how it happened. Now, that's the task. And then what? But we are all masters of wishful thinking. We all are, all of us. But we can't invent our history. We can't invent it, unfortunately. Would be cool if we could, but we can't. We have to accept it as it is. And so we need to try and find out, how was it actually? Yeah? Meaning, as an approach, we are strict non-believers. Strict non-believers. We don't believe anything we read, anything we hear. We are skeptical to the ground, everywhere. Yeah? You don't believe me what I'm saying. All those numbers, you scrutinize them and say Dieckmann was wrong. Yeah? Or the arguments, no, this is wrong because, why? Because of other evidence. Because you have better evidence of more complete or other than I do. That's the basis. Yeah? We don't believe what other people say. We are skepticists, deeply. If a professor tells us, we don't argue with names. We never argue with names. Hilberg said, or Saul Friedlander said, or whoever. Yeah? No, we don't believe what they say. We scrutinize it. If we are serious about what we want to learn. Yeah? So this also means sometimes we have to unlearn things. A precondition for learning is that sometimes we have to unlearn things. Yeah? And what I'm coming across all the time is that we are kind of battling with the early post-war narratives in Germany, and I think it's the same for Lithuania as well. The early post-war narratives, which kind of are between what happened and our view, what we see. Yeah. Let's talk about German examples. Yeah. So civil administration, for example, those murders who killed 95% of the Jews in Eastern Europe under their command, under their rule. That we couldn't do anything because the SS did it. Yeah? And there were radicals within the party who were bad. The radicals and the SS, they are the ones to blame. And we as an institution, as civil administration, we are not guilty. And people like Alexander Dalin, who wrote those first huge books about German occupation in Russia, actually did that as a task from the CIA. Now how to do it better, but that's on another page. What he did, he asked the people who were then very often at the same time endangered to be taken to court. Tell me how it was. Tell me what you could do. Yeah? And of course, all of them were telling him stories of their innocence, or of how they tried to do their best in dramatic circumstances, and often tragic circumstances. Yeah? Meaning, there's a whole wall of this post-war early narratives trying to defend yourself. Yeah? And we have believed that too often, and historians have repeated that. Again and again. Hilberg, on pages and pages and pages, he repeats what the SS people said in the Einheitsgruppen trial. We had an early order to kill everybody, and so we did. Yeah? Repeat all over again. No? No? And so we have to be skeptical about everything we read. Yeah? And try to get back to the sources, to the evidence. No? What can we really confirm? Another point, one of the biggest traps we're dealing with all the time is the ethnic trap. Yeah? We're arguing all the time like Nazis. This planet is a is a place where peoples, Völker, fight each other all the time and are competing. Yeah? War is natural, so competition is natural. It's either you or us. Yeah? And so we're competing everywhere. Yeah? Even in memory and in our relation to history. Yeah? And so the categories we're using, and that's true for all sides, Germans, Lithuanians and Jews as well. Yeah? Categories we're using are ethnic nationalist categories. And we all know fascists were extreme ethnic nationalists. So very often we are close to repeating that thinking. And we don't want that. Because it doesn't reflect what's really happened. It doesn't reflect what really happened. So beware of ethnic categories. It's a huge trap. Yeah? Then, what do we do history for? Yeah? Do we want to instrumentalize history? Do we want to do identity politics? If yes, so go ahead. But they're not history. It's creation. It's fairy tales, creation of myth, which then need to be defended. Heroes, martyrs, all the stuff. If you want to do real history, and real history, as quoted in the book, it's grey. Real history is grey, all the way through. Yeah? Heroes are nice. James Bond everywhere is nice. Yeah? But it's not true. It's not true. Yeah? Unless we find people like Ona Shimaita. No, just saw in my eyes, she's a hero. Yeah? But there are so few of them. 1 in 10 million. Yeah. Now you're getting my point. Now what I'm trying to say. And then the last point, sort of content-wise, we have to stop to no infantilization, infantilize ourselves, turn ourselves into, we didn't know, into little children. We have to take responsibility. All of us in Europe. We couldn't do this and that. No, we don't. Let's take responsibility for what happened. It's not to declare yourself guilty. No. It's about taking responsibility. And let's look at what happened. And insecurity makes you strong. The real strength is to know that security is an illusion. So no infantilization, we have to take responsibilities on. And we do that by gathering necessary arguments for building sufficient arguments. Yeah? And this is what we kind of tried in this book, this interview book, which Ruta did with me, and we kept on going on and on and on. Necessary arguments, and is it enough for sufficient arguments? Yeah? So we are never content with only a few necessary arguments. Anti-Semitism, the Soviets, the Germans, yeah, or whatever, childhood trauma. No, we want sufficient arguments. This doesn't explain what happened. We want sufficient arguments. Yeah, and we, as I said at the very beginning, we won't have answers. It's an ongoing process all the time, but that is part of the answer that's ongoing. Yeah, and we have to unlearn and learn again, unlearn and learn again. Yeah, so I'm emphasizing this process very much. And we keep looking for those sufficient arguments. And we do that together. Yeah? Okay, these were my remarks I wanted to make. And now we do have some time for a common discussion.
Thank you, Christoph. to invite the audience really to join the discussion. I think there are always some things to argue about, to agree, to disagree, to comment, to offer a different interpretation. And I really encourage audience, please, to come out with whatever you have to say or ask. Please go ahead.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Many times during these 2 years, I asked Christoph, you think how many Holocaust perpetrators are in Lithuania? And you never answered.
No.
And now you said about Germany, 250,000. So I'm asking again, how many in Lithuania? He is a historian.
Dear Ruta, we have a chapter in the book about it, when we discussed the article from Rokshenas. Remember?
Because I told how many.
Yes,
And
you were
he
saying,
didn't-
and then I was
he didn't
debating it, and it, no?
It's just a provocation to start a discussion. Thank you.
So my question would be, who is a perpetrator actually, Ruta? Whom do you see as a perpetrator? Why do you use this judicial term, even though it's completely useless for our understanding of
Because you
history?
just used it for Germany.
My name is Laima Vince. I am a writer, and I grew up in the Lithuanian American diaspora community. So I grew up amongst parents, grandparents in a community of war refugees, and among those people, there were some perpetrators who were hidden in among them. And so there's a few things I wanted to say. The thought as I was listening to your talk, Christopher, and thank you so much for this talk, was the way into having this discussion, especially with people who are in denial about the historical facts, is through empathy. If we start from that place of empathy, of heart space, we can start having that trauma discussion. I have been working on a project the past 5 years where I've been writing my dissertation here at Vilnius University in the Department of Humanities. And the title of my dissertation is Memory and Post-Memory in the Writing of North American Writers of Lithuanian Descent. So I'm looking at writing in English about Lithuania. And what I found was I found 23 writers, and I'm not making any differentiations whether these writers who have roots in Lithuanian are Jewish Lithuanian or Christian Lithuanian, pagan Lithuanian. I mean, I'm just looking for roots. And when I conducted a survey, followed up with face-to-face interviews, read the body of work of books that are published about Lithuania, I thought at first that I would be writing about, that the writers who I would write about would be writing about the diaspora community, about the displaced persons camp, Siberia, and they do write about these topics, but the overwhelming topic that I discovered was silence about the Holocaust in the Lithuanian diaspora community, and narratives, reflective narratives about granddaughters, grandsons discovering that a grandparent had been a member of the Lithuanian police and was a perpetrator. So my dissertation, I focused on 5 memoirs, and 3 of them reflect on the Holocaust. One is the painter Samuel Bach's memoir, Painted in Words, and actually this is a publication based on my dissertation of that chapter. And then the other one is Rita Gaddis's A Guest at the Shooter's Banquet, and then Yulia Shukie's Siberian Exile. I didn't expect this, but working with the English department here at Vilnius University, I had received so much pushback. I was shocked by the comments that I received about my work. I have in writing comments saying, Laima Vince is a Lithuanian American, she's an English language speaker, she has access to the international arena, and therefore she should be closely monitored when she writes about historical topics, sensitive historical topics that affect Lithuania's international image and that can be damaging to Lithuania's image. Just this Tuesday, right, I was supposed to defend my dissertation this month. I was called in by the head of the doctoral committee, Vilnius University, and I was told that Vilnius University has made the decision not to allow me to defend my dissertation.
On the
And
basis of what?
Well, this is, and I quote, your American academic style is too different from our Lithuanian academic style. Look, I have a lot of documents to back up what I'm saying, but basically I'm still in a state of shock, but I think this all has to do with a central trauma wound, with memory, with fear about talking about this trauma history. And I could say growing up in the diaspora community, there was silence. And the first person who told me about Lithuanian involvement in the Holocaust in Lithuania was my grandfather, who was a diplomat, and he said this in Lithuania. He said to me when Lithuania declared independence, he said, Lithuania must face what happened to Lithuania's Jews during the Holocaust. If we're independent, we must talk about this now. And that was that first light bulb that went on in my head, and it started this research. So I feel like I didn't go out looking for the theme of my dissertation. My theme found me. It was a theme that needs to be talked about. But now I am being silenced by this university. And so I don't know. It's just, I just wanted to put that out there. That why is that? Why are we so afraid to talk about Lithuanian perpetrator involvement in the Holocaust? Why are we so afraid of this topic? What do we have to lose? And why are we so afraid that when a researcher spends 5 years of her life researching, writing about, interviewing writers, and really trying her best to write about it in a fair-minded way, the response is simply, you may not defend that dissertation. So that's just what I just wanted to put that out there. As we...
I was about to make a comment hearing the story that I've been sitting in this auditorium, in this very auditorium, between 1980 and 1985, and I thought that kind of Soviet approach has already long time gone, but obviously I was wrong.
Neo-Sovietism.
I would like to ask a question. I've been reading today Why Did It Happen by Uta and by Christoph. Largely it's Christoph, in my opinion, who at the center stage, and Uta is very, very accurately driving that book in putting questions and making it very interesting story. And I have to admit that knowledge is endless. You always learn. And sometimes even you think that you know a lot, or sometimes when you're too proud of yourself, you think you know everything. Still there are surprises on the way. So I have to admit I have a couple of surprises as well on the topic of Lithuanian Holocaust particularly. And I would like to ask Christoph a question. He clearly states, and that was basically even a declaration, and you could see it even in this presentation, he avoids the definition of collaborators. Okay, he avoids it, and instead he offers cooperation. Okay, and we all know we are talking about both cases, talking about occupying forces, right, or administration of occupiers, doesn't matter what. So my question is, where that this tiny difference between the two definitions, okay, matters so much that one is supposed to be avoided and the other one is preferred over the other. Because, and I'm sorry for my long question, because in Lithuanian context of the historical narrative, speaking of occupations, the collaborators clearly exist only on the side of the Soviet occupation. And they somewhat disappear when it comes to the Nazi occupation. So it is kind to me a very subtle declaration to avoid kind of definition of collaborator while speaking of occupying forces in the context of Holocaust.
Sergey, where's collaboration is everywhere. When you look at German occupied territories during the Shoah, it's everywhere. It's a key term for the behavior of non-Germans. It doesn't disappear, not at all. It's the key term actually, and there are a lot of efforts to define the term, and I tried as well, and it's impossible. As an historian, it's impossible. Why is it impossible? Because it's not an historical term. It's a judicial term now. In the beginning, it was collaboration, means cooperation, en français. Right? Okay. That is Vichy France, October 1940, cooperating with Germany. The unoccupied part of France, nous machen une collaboration avec Allemagne to preserve the rest of the independence of Vichy France. That was the start of the term usage of the term collaboration in this context of the Second World War. 1940, October 1940. 5 years later, in 1945, the term was completely burned, had completely changed its meaning. Why? Because it's the collaborators who did the bad things. And we as a nation, patriots, wouldn't collaborate. We as a French nation, de Gaulle would never collaborate with the Germans. Vichy France, yes. Pétain, yes. No, collaborators are the bad ones. It's a way of externalizing this, and collaborators were put to court and for high treason, to have betrayed the fatherland, for betray. Yeah? They were put to court all over Europe. So collaboration turned into a judicial term at that point, and was taken out of a historical context and turned into a judicial one. And now there are a lot of efforts to get it back into the historical setting. And I don't see how this should be possible. Their definitions, they're like 10 pages long. Yeah? In economy and ideological and collaborationism and just in this sphere and that sphere and partial collaboration and conditional collaboration and this and this and this. Yeah? It doesn't lead anywhere, I would say. It doesn't help you with any typology. There are no sort of structures here to see. What you can see is that the judgment on the people you're talking about is already there before you even start. Because the judgment is in the term itself. It's the same with the term perpetrator. And I'm sorry actually that I used it. Yeah? Because it's another one of those terms which are taken from the judiciary setting, transmitted into the historical setting. And that is one of the things we have to learn to avoid, I would say. Let's avoid, we are not judges, we don't use judicial language. Our question is not who was guilty. Our question is what happened and why. Our question is not who was guilty. And if you use the term collaborator, you want to know to which extent and how guilty is he or she.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm not interested in that. It's not you. When you are a judge, do that. Yeah, but you are not, and we want. And then what you see is part of this. It's all grey. We don't have heroes here. We don't have villains here. We don't have heroes here because every bad person has also good sides, and every good person has also bad sides. Yeah, and many of these people we're talking about were carrying on several shoulders. Yeah, depending on context, depending on timing. Yeah. So now, most famous example of Lithuania is, of course, those people incarcerated by the Germans in 1943, after the failure to mobilize for an SS battalion, for an SS division. Those 46 intellectuals who were imprisoned in concentration camps in Stutthof, in Poland. Yeah. Now, 1/3 of those were active perpetrators in 1941, killing Jews, organizing them. 1/3. Yeah? But now they were victims of Nazis, which is at the same time. Yeah? Why did the mobilization for the SS division fail here, in difference to Latvia and Estonia? Yeah? Because the network of the nationalist Lithuanians was still functioning, including the fascists. Lithuanian fascists, I mean. Yeah? And they could avoid that. The Germans had no chance of mobilizing. And that's why he used these helpless efforts of force and terror in spring 43, which was ridiculous, actually. Yeah? So, meaning, for historical analysis, if I want to know what happened and why, I'm pleading all the time for, let's not use judicial terms. Let's not use them. If I want to know who's guilty and who is to blame, and not know who's guilty, then yes, go ahead, use your judicial terms, but that's not an historical question. It's a judicial question. Yeah? Same as with genocide. Genocide is not an historical term. It's a judicial term. Yeah? It's a judicial term, invented in 1948 to mobilize the UN, the freshly created United Nations, to intervene if a genocide is being committed. Yeah? So it's a political judicial term under certain definitions, very vague definitions. But as an historical analysis, has no value really. Yeah? It's good for political discussions. You can raise interest, you can mobilize. No? But as an historical term, it's useless.
So, talking about Lithuanian provisional government, so in historical terms, you suggest that this government, you suggest to call it cooperating with Nazi occupying regime, right?
Of course.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify.
I usually doesn't agree with Sergey on historical questions, but now I have disagreed with you on one point. There are only few historians here, and the use of term "we are historians" doesn't work, and we have real-life problems. One of which you mentioned, it's Nareka, one of those 46 in Shtetl. Another very known problem is monument to Christoph Dieckmann, who also was Lithuanian hero and died for Lithuania and was probably the most known perpetrator, and you don't like this term, murder and so on. So you were not, not you, are not using that term, you are not pointing with direct terms that they were guilty in one or another time of this or that. We will not have at least removal of Christoph Dieckmann's monument.
Yeah. Yes, there's no disagreement here at this point.
Works?
I don't know. The point is, when I use the term collaboration as an historical, analytical term, the judgment is already in the term I'm using. That's the point. If I want to condemn morally what people have done, I don't need this term. I just describe what they did. I don't need the term to do that. In 2006, when Sergey and me, we published this book on the summer and autumn 1941. No? It's a clear, morally, completely unequivocal narrative of what happened in summer and autumn 41, and you won't find the term collaboration there. It doesn't take anything away if you don't use it. And the difference is then the judgment comes at the end, when you see the whole story. And it's not there in the term already you're using to sort of how to approach the thing. And that's a big difference. Yeah, and that's my point. Yeah, in colloquial speech, we all use collaboration, we all use genocide. But analytically, when you're sort of sharp, when you want to be sort of, yeah, then you don't use it. I would plead for that. Yeah, that's the difference.
Well, in my personal opinion, I'm not a historian, but I believe that, of course, for a historian, what matters is the evidence of certain action, okay, yes. Of certain acts, okay? And once this evidence is there, so the act can be proven as happened, okay?
Exactly.
So that is the basis of objective historian. But to me, certain declarations of political organization where it is clearly, where it is explicitly the wish to collaborate is expressed. I believe I am not putting any judgment on my own behalf, but I'm just looking at the document and saying, okay, this organization declared they want to work with occupying power. And correct me if I'm wrong, in history, basically, you're right. The term of collaboration, okay, has been used only and only when you are talking in regards of occupying power, no matter which war you would be talking about, absolutely. And I don't think that the collaboration as such does not exclude cooperation on the lower levels. When you are speaking about executive command of the Holocaust, when it goes, you know, the whole pyramid goes down under. So you have people who are doing things out of belief. They declared so, there is evidence to prove it. And there are people who were doing it because they were ordered and because they were offered or whatever they were, it doesn't matter. They were part of a little machine. They were cooperating because collaboration is a shared goal, okay? At least this is the way I understand it. When you talk about, collaboration is a shared goal, okay? Cooperation is a common goal. And that's what makes a difference when the mechanism of occupying power coming and finding on the ground people who either cooperate or either collaborate. So I personally would not exclude one term at the expense of the other. I would use both.
This is not getting us anywhere because you can say authors collaborate on a book. Artists collaborate on some things. That means they work together on a common project. Okay, so if we say the common project is to kill Jews, so anyone who has worked together to do that are collaborators, right? So, well, anyway, it's not so much a question, but I think what Professor Dieckmann you described as the sort of some of the issues and with the narratives and the problems and discussing and analyzing these issues, I think you make very good points. But then there are people who try to use these same terms and these same concepts for their own sort of purposes, political. I think I just read recently about Babin Yar and the controversy over the museum that they're establishing there, and I wanted to get your perspective on Mr. Kanovich, because it seems that the project is very good. The problem, maybe one of the problems is it's being supported by 100 million by a Russian oligarch who's a friend of Putin's, and that in some way is being used as a sort of propaganda by Putin and others against the Ukrainians and to get into the Ukrainian conflict. So there.
Who are you? Who's asking? Who are you?
Oh, Ramūnas Kondatas. I'm a historian and a museum person.
Historian museum person, okay.
You see, for the benefit...
Well, I think what I'm saying is you are right in bringing these things and the analysis, but we can see that there's these sort of what they're called hybrid wars going on, where people are using some of these arguments to make a point against. I mean, obviously the Ukrainians and Lithuanians have to face their history of what happened. But then the other side, who's the enemy of Lithuania, is saying, see, we said that Lithuanians are fascists, they're Jew killers, and now you should believe us. And some way, other Lithuanians, like, they don't want to buy into that, and anything that smacks of saying that yes, we were Jew killers, they see as a bad reflection on the Lithuanian nation. So that really doesn't get us anywhere to face the truth, because to face the truth would be to admit to your enemy that yes, there were fascists among you, there were Jew killers among you, and other things. So that complicates this issue. It's not just having a nice, clear discussion and coming up with a rational sort of conclusion to all of this.
This is a terrible mess. It's a terrible mess, and you're touching a few points of that. So this is not a nice academic discussion. It's right. It's a story about people being murdered, about blood, about betrayal, about sort of unspeakable suffering, actually, the moment you look closer in it. So it's a huge tragedy where you can only sort of shut up and cry, actually, when you look into that. So, and that's the difference. When I say I collaborate with Nazis, it's not something I collaborate with other writers. It's a completely different context, and it's in the historical NS context, where I would say the term collaboration is burned. Yeah? You can use it, but it doesn't get you anywhere. There it doesn't get you anywhere because the judgment is in the term itself. Yeah? And it doesn't help. It helps you in collaboration. Is always the others collaborate. It's always them. It's never us. Wait a second. Just a second. To repeat that point. Babin Yar, just shortly. I was very much involved with that project, actually. When they started in 2017-18, they had a scientific committee writing a historical narrative of Babin Yar and for the whole of Eastern Europe. It was led by Karel Berkhoff, a wonderful Dutch historian who was supposed to be the chief historian, and he gathered a few people, and I was part of that. Yeah? And we wrote this, which is available in the net as well, a basic historical narrative of Babin Yar, including the whole of Eastern Europe. We finished that over 2 years. And then Czarnowski came in. Czarnowski, which is an artistic director who made works which I find completely not acceptable on Soviet times, actually, on the KGB, on torture, on Soviet crimes, and he was then asked by I forgot by whom to be at the center figure in the commission for Babin Yar, and the projects they have now for how to construct, how to build, how to remember all the victims of the Ukraine, Babin Yar, Ukraine, and actually the ambition is to make it for the whole of Eastern Europe, is completely out of, no way. Yeah, no way that this is somehow acceptable. And there are many people who said, yes, it's acceptable. But me, Karel Berkhoff and Dieter Pohl, we said, no, not in our name. So we left. Yeah. So at the beginning it was great. There was no problem with that the finances was coming from Russian Jews, because they wouldn't interfere. Yeah, we had complete freedom in what we were doing. It was completely based on evidence, history. Yeah, and Karel was the guarantee person. And he was then pushed aside. Yeah? So it's a tragic story there. And I'm afraid we're going to see what's going to be out there in 4 or 5 years. It's going to be horrible. I'm sure, if it stays like as it is. Yeah? It could have been a high-level, wonderful sort of Eastern European model, actually, sort of even east of Poland, so to speak. Yeah? And it's going to be, I'm afraid, it's going to be very bad. Yeah? Doesn't mean, the last point, let's avoid the ethnic trap. We don't play that game. Yeah? The Lithuanians, the Jews, the Russians, we don't play that. We boycott it at every stage. We sabotage that all the time. Yeah?
Well, I think we should move from the topic of those two definitions. I would like to clarify one thing, probably for the benefit of Christoph, to make my points more clear. I wish the society, including historians, dependent, especially, not meaning independent, they would come to the level where they would be able to operate exactly the terms as you say, and they would drop the term of collaborator. Unfortunately, the situation here is a bit different, and this type of suggestion would be, in my opinion, would be welcomed very fast that a person like Ilya stated, for instance, Noreika, will turn from collaborator into, he would be downgraded to a cooperator, right? And Svirka will remain a collaborator. And that's what makes the difference in the definitions over here, in my opinion. Now, in regards of what I heard, I was very surprised to hear the definition of hybrid war in this discussion, because this discussion, I believe, is very much professional. But I think that these sorts of arguments, that what the other side will say, they're going to use it against us, they're going to launch a hybrid war.
We don't play that war.
We are not launching any war. Truth can never launch a war. And truth is the best argument vis-a-vis those who try to manipulate a half-truth. And the problem we are facing is, unfortunately, as long as we will live, and we will live in denial, as you say, avoiding to put the truth only once on the table and move on. The other side will always use this weakness against us, because they will see that we are not mature enough to face that truth, whatever it is. And that is the lesson of the history. You cannot change it. If my uncle was serving in NKVD, what I'm supposed to do with that? What? Change it? Because of what? Because I want it? And it's gonna change? It's not gonna change. It's gonna stay there forever. And I feel sorry for whatever he did. Am I ashamed to be sorry? Why should I?
I'm Sergey Kanovich. I'm working for the Vilnius Jewish Public Library. I will turn maybe to more general questions. Say, when the Holocaust was taking place all over Europe, and it had its differentialities, it was different, like if we compare Denmark, France, Romania, Hungary, Estonia, and Lithuania. What would be the exceptional traits, features of Lithuania, making it special? Could you, is that possible to clarify? What makes Lithuania special in this country?
I would say...
all non-timing, cruelty, expression of collaboration, the amount of collaboration of whatever.
Nothing of that, nothing, actually. It was as special as every region has its specialties. Yeah? But there's nothing related to the Lithuanian behavior somehow that makes it special. No, nothing. Cruelty you find everywhere to an extent which is... Yeah?
Well, let's say Denmark and Lithuania.
Come on, Denmark. Denmark had its own government in place all the time. Denmark wasn't even properly occupied, so to speak. Yeah? And the German Gestapo in 1943 sort of tipped the Danish people, we're going to deport your Jews, so get them out. Because we Germans needed the French agricultural products. There's no way to compare Denmark and Lithuania on any sensible basis. Yeah? And Danish fascists, believe me, are as bad as Lithuanian fascists. Just as the Dutch, as the French, as the Spanish, as everybody. Now you have the Spanish Brigade, Blue Division. Yeah, in the northern Soviet Union, bastards. Yeah, there wasn't even any. There was no link with it was just Franco. Yeah. So
It doesn't make any sense to me. That's one thing. Timing, yes, but this timing did not depend in any way on the people here, on the Lithuanians or the Poles or the Latvians or somebody. It depended on the Germans, on us. Yeah, because the crucial precondition for getting to Moscow, for beating the Soviet Union, was to get to Leningrad. Yeah, and the problem that this warfare, as some of you might know, I always try to link what's happening in the hinterland to what's happening in a strategic sense all over. Yeah, and the highest goal of the first month of the war was to get to Leningrad and then turn southwards towards Moscow. Till September, that was the highest priority from the Nazi, from Hitler. And the command of the army. And this didn't work. And so they did everything to make that possible. It didn't work at the end. But that was sort of, by this region, had this special emphasis. Yeah? And the readiness of the non-Germans here to cooperate with the Germans was the same as the Ukrainians, the Poles, the whatever. Yeah? And you always have to sort of a full picture. And this sort of this ethnic trap is again in the background. German, Lithuanians, you are Jewish, you're not even Lithuanian. You ethnic Lithuanians, you have a bad character as a people. I mean, how stupid can it become? Yeah? Of course you don't. Of course we Germans are not as Germans bad. By what we do, we are bad. Yeah? But not by what we are. And that's a huge difference. So specialty, yes, but not more special than any other region you look at. Yeah? If you ask who was more cruel, who was more whatever, yeah, then make it specific. Make it specific. Yeah? And look at your sources. The Germans were writing about the barbaric Lithuanians in summer 41. I write about it in the book as well. Here also we talk about it. The German SS comes in and says, oh, you Lithuanians, you are subhuman because you kill and you enjoy to kill, allegedly. But this is, of course, reports to Berlin. This is German propaganda. And from the SS towards the Wehrmacht, towards the army. Because they needed to legitimize that they're already here, that they are murdering more people than was agreed upon. Yeah? So there is a specific context here, which we must take into account. And if a German general and a German SS photograph says, oh, look at the Lithuanian women are holding up their babies to see the massacre at Lietukis, don't believe it, idiot. Yeah? Don't believe that. It's propaganda. Yeah? I mean, really. Yeah? It's German propaganda about the colonized people. It's a colonial view, and we must not repeat that. If we know that a woman raises her child to see a murder, yes, then say it. But don't repeat the German propaganda. You know, that's the evidence between how to deal with sources. The difference between this is secured evidence, and this is just, yeah? And that is why it's so important to be so exact in what you do, in what you say and write. Yeah? And not just to believe everything. Yeah? And beware of these German documents. And those German documents are not more reliable than Lithuanian, than Jewish, than Polish, than Ukrainian documents. No. We have this prejudice. German documents are precise. Yeah? No. No? I mean, come on. No? I mean, I work with for decades. But that's an illusion. It's an illusion. The Jäger report, all of us who know exactly what's happened in Lithuania, in the provinces, know how to deconstruct the Jäger report. How to deconstruct it. Yeah? And to analyze it as a source. Put it into context, what is said, what's not being. Compare the two different reports we have. What are the differences? What do they say about the Lithuanians? In one they said, oh, they helped us. And others said that oh, they did it on their own initiative. Why? Because that's what they wanted to hear in Berlin. And that's what Stalica wanted them to write. Yeah? So we have to do a lot of reading and a lot of scrutinizing this stuff, and then we get further. Yeah? German Ordnung is an illusion. German Ordnung is an illusion. And German killing is just as chaotic and bloody and cruel as non-German killing. Believe me.
Stereotype.
Yes, it's a stereotype.
Violetta.
I would like to ask the following question. First of all, it seems that you are still very much trapped in these categories of perpetrator, victim, and bystander, although you're arguing against them. So I guess that the entire discipline is like that. Well, because what you pointed out yourself, you said you did not want to use the word perpetrators, but you used the word perpetrators, and I think it's just a remark. So I think it's very hard to escape these categories, right? They are already kind of rooted in the discipline, right? But it leads to my next question. There is another group, bystanders, well, called bystanders, basically people who lived in these different areas, and they are very unique, each one of them, as you know, each locale. And what do you know as a historian and in general as a researcher about the position of these people who had no guns? You know, like each one of these locales, they are like socially complex structures. They have their own hierarchies, there are women, teenagers, and so on and so forth. Who studies the identity of these people who were not recruited in the structures that were armed and had guns? How do you study that? How do you deal with it? Are German historians interested in those identities and their subject positions? So that's my question.
Okay, very good. Thanks a lot. Yes, of course, I'm using those terms, yeah, and I shouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm trapped in those terms. I wouldn't say I'm trapped because this is in sort of when we talk like that. Yeah, I'm using that. Analytically, we try to differentiate between levels of responsibility and power and choice and on all of that. And in writing, I would not say I wouldn't use Täter. I wouldn't perpetrator. I wouldn't use it. Yeah. Sort of for analytical thinking, it's important not to act as a judge. Because again, if you use the term perpetrator, you want to know to what extent. I'm not interested in that. I want to know what did you do and why, or what did they do and why. Yeah. So I take immediately the criticism. Yes, I'm using those terms.
We all are.
Yes, but my plea is let's try and get out of that. The same is true for the term bystander. But again, it's taken from the court. A bystander is everybody. As with collaboration, there are so many attempts to define bystander, and it even reached so the local Lithuanian peasant is in that category as well as Roosevelt or Churchill. They're also bystanders as nations, as states. Yeah. As well as, actually, bystander is a catch-all term. It's supposed to catch everybody who's not convicted of being a perpetrator and is not classified as a victim. And everybody in between is kind of potentially a bystander. So again, one of those terms where I would argue against using it, but be more precise. Yeah, Hilberg has introduced the term perpetrator, bystander, victim. In the later versions of this 3-volume Persecution and Murder of the European Jews, he has replaced the term bystander by neighbor. Yeah, another term which is not good here, because most of the killings was not done by neighbors, was done by killing troops, by killing squads. Yeah, not by neighbors. Another one of those illusions where I would say no. Yes, neighbors were sometimes involved, but on the whole, it's more about politics and killing squads doing that. It's not neighbor killing neighbor. Yeah, on the whole. My whole plea to look at the society which enables this kind of crimes was to look at the society as a whole and their specific contribution that made this possible. So this is what, when you ask, well, do you look at, or does German historiography look at bystanders? Yes. No? Insofar as you make social analysis in a comprehensive way of what makes a crime possible, or what makes this crime specifically possible. Answers would always depend, and I would argue it strictly for that in all spheres, on the evidence. Because especially in these spheres, neighbor, bystander, very often it's a lack of sources we have, and we are speculating like crazy. Yeah, and I would argue, no, if we don't know, we don't know. No, so let's
So let's just leave it. Yeah? And if we can prove something, or if we can really argue something, then it's better. One remark relating to that, to you, I wouldn't say we have to fight for the truth against all those who don't believe the truth. History doesn't function like that. History is, in historiography, as we know very well, is constant process. Yeah? And it's about a craftsmanship, yeah? Where we constantly use evidence, try to put it into arguments, try to put the necessary arguments to sufficient arguments. That's our daily work, so to speak. And this is constantly evolving. You said, oh, I learned something. Yeah? Great, you have to unlearn some things to learn new things. Very good. And this is constantly ongoing. Yeah? So I would never say, oh, I have the truth and eat it. No, don't. No? We are in this together, and it's a craftsmanship we can develop together. Yeah? So that's the plea.
Edmundas Kulikauskas. Mr. Kanovich, you participated in a television program recently, together with Dr. Arūnas Bubnys, who's the director of the Genocide Center. And you expressed some very interesting thoughts, observations about what's wrong. In fact, I think a lot of us would like to solve this problem somehow. What are the steps? What are the observations? Perhaps Dr. Dieckmann can add to it. What shall we do? Possibly, could you repeat your arguments that you made, or observations you made in that television program about, I think it was mostly about Dr. Bubnys and well, the situation as it is.
Okay, thank you for the question. For those who don't know, I was making a remark to an attempt of director of Genocide Center to offer a sort of criteria of making a result of historical research made by Genocide Center in terms of those participated in the Holocaust. Okay, they have an established list of different sort of participation. We don't know even the criteria. They have established the names of 2,055 people already 6 years ago. After very long research they conducted, and actually Arūnas Bubnys was in charge of that research. So my remark was very simple. I said that the truth, we are not living in Soviet times, and that the truth is not supposed to be offered in bites and pieces. If you have established, and by truth I mean historical research, a certain evidence they have found, even by law, okay, and I don't want to get into legal aspects, but even by law, this institution, every citizen is supposed to be allowed to be acquainted with any sort of research they have conducted and finished, or even if it's ongoing. It's not a state secret. To answer shortly to your question, it's not so complicated, in my opinion. There is nothing complicated. The issue needs to be taken out of the hands of politicians. It has to be given to this sort of debate here, where people can argue, they can disagree, they can offer different interpretations, and they can leave the debate with the society, not with politicians. There is no one truth. I don't have one truth. If some people think I do, all I want is that the truth, the historical research, would become available, and not only in regards of that list of perpetrators. We have to be careful with definitions, but I am not going to be careful with definitions, okay? Because this is the term which has been used. I don't understand what's going on, by the way, because there is a society of historians which are falling, in my opinion, victims of working in certain state organizations which are not allowing them to perform their academic duty, and they are falling a victim of political manipulations. And these are professionals. I'm not downgrading any of them. They are true researchers. But once they make a research, what happens? Shame happens. And what happens next? Who said hybrid war? This is what happened next. It is turning against us because we were not able to say the truth, to face the truth, to face the facts which were researched and established by professional people. How long we have to speak about the very same problem? There has to be understanding, which is, I believe, is on the political level. These people, they simply don't understand that they underestimated one thing. Long time ago, and in the process, probably some of them, they thought that if they would offer a sort of narrative where commemorating Jewish victims of World War II is okay, but deconstructing that crime, naming who did it, why did it, when did it, is not okay, they made a mistake because of 200,000 victims. They're going to be here always, and they will always be turning to us. What have we done to commemorate them? And here I would like to take this discussion to an absolutely different point, where I was trying to think and ask Christoph, because I completely understand a professional ethic of a historian or any other researcher. Avoid judgment, okay? You're not supposed to judge. That's great. But once your research is done, okay, nilly-willy, this is interpreted by society on the moral scale, okay? Whether this action was moral, it was not moral, and that is the way we humans work, okay? We say this is bad and this is good. This guy was a hero and this guy was not. We cannot avoid evaluating your research, and you yourself even, for 5 seconds, you allowed yourself to stop being researcher and you judged. In a good way.
But at the end,
one second. You did you judged. You said, look at Chimaite.
Yeah.
Voila. So we are humans. We are judging. We are judging nilly-willy. So my question is, okay, what is the basically when the research ends with a historian? What is his position vis-a-vis society, which is in denial, and he obviously sees that society is in denial? What is his moral obligation after he made the research and he established certain facts?
I'm not sure I have understood what you asked me, actually. Moral.
That's even better.
I'm not pleading to avoid morals. I'm just saying let's avoid moralistic language at the beginning, at starting point of our analysis. That's it. If you read this interview book, if you read at some point you will be able to read my full study. It's you will see that it's not like it is full of morals, but not in the language. It's in the story. It's full of, so it's not like being first an historian and then being a human.
Okay,
no.
I will be provocative then. Okay, I'll be more provocative than I expected myself to be.
But watch out, not be too provocative.
I'm not sure. Commission of evaluation of regime of occupying regimes and their crimes, Nazi and Soviet. Okay. You have been part of that semi-dead, and I'm not afraid to say that, semi-dead commission since 2000, I believe.
Centuries.
Yeah, centuries. Okay. Unfortunately, I can ask this question only to you. you and Sužiedelis, you both signed an absolutely clear document in regards of beginning of the Holocaust and the mechanisms and whatever. And it's, again, luckily, after many, many efforts, became available online. My question is, the members of that commission, in my opinion, they clearly see the misleading statements by historian colleagues, and I'm not talking on political level, I'm talking on professional level. Why is that there was so little opposition on professional level to an obvious obfuscation of the Holocaust by colleagues, which I'm not going to name, but everybody knows, working for certain institutions? I could not understand why this debate never happened on professional level. When one says, Škirpa was okay, you know, he didn't kill anybody, okay, genocide center. Then Noreika was okay, he didn't kill anybody. Where you guys historians are when you read things like that openly in public, you understand that that sort of things, they have implication on society. And they have a negative implication on society. And since these guys, they never meet an open opposition on professional level, they go on. They never stop.
You do know the statement of the commission to Škirpa and Noreika, right?
Yeah.
So that's it. No? That's what was there to say? It's nonsense. No? That as a commission there wasn't much to do. No? And the commission is kind of a loose body of I don't know how many historians, which is not sort of in the position like to judge on a weekly basis all the nonsense that is out there. Yeah, it's not in that position. Yeah, the only thing I'm really ashamed of is that we were not more behind Yitzhak Arad, who just died a few months ago.
Yeah.
When he was subject to this infamous investigation by the judiciary, there we should have immediately backed him up immediately, and we didn't. Yeah, I'm ashamed of that one. Yeah. But all the rest, I would say, no? And it's also point of don't externalize that to the commission.
No.
Don't externalize it to the commission.
I mentioned the commission. I mentioned the commission just in case. My later point was on the professional level. Forget the commission, just on professional level, because you know the institution and the documents they're providing time and again, research or statements they're providing time and again, which have absolutely nothing to do with what you're suggesting to do, with objective, independent, politically non-motivated research. They see no opposition to the nonsenses, excuse me, and ad absurdum they're bringing this topic.
Yeah.
And the victim is the society, because then society becomes annihilated. It becomes, good and bad. It starts fighting with each other because these guys said and nobody else said anything. That's the point. There is no debate on that level. Why?
And that is the task, to have this debate going on all the time. Because there's no way of avoiding or preventing these opinions from being published. So the democracy is a constant debate on this. A constant debate with positions you don't like.
Agreed.
No?
I am not suggesting to close them down.
And that is the aim.
Contrary.
No? So must come. So this question of why maybe I'm the wrong address. No? When I, as a German, would intervene each time I think, okay, this would no. It's a question to to your own people more than to use ethnic categories, than to me.
Look, I believe sometimes German intervention would be welcomed.
We read the lovely Polish workers. No, it's recorded. I'm not going to tell bad jokes. No.
Thomas Balkanis, Lithuanian Institute of History. Professor, I would like to ask you about future of the Holocaust studies. You are the person who wrote a lot about the Holocaust, and I would say the Holocaust is one of the best research topics in modern history. But I wonder, what are new directions, what are new trends in the Holocaust studies? And speaking about Lithuania, what are the topics or aspects of the Holocaust which are the least researched so far when we speak about the Holocaust in Lithuania, in your opinion?
Yeah.
And in general, how would you see the Holocaust studies in the next, let's say, 10 years?
I start with what I know best, Lithuania. Yeah, as focus on what is being left to do in Lithuania. Most of it. Most of it is left to do. There isn't one Noreika, there's 25 Noreikas. No, and with the sort of replacements, 30, 35 Noreikas. As I said, the Lithuanian administration under the German Gebietskommissar and Stadtkommissar, where's the work on the city administration of Kaunas? Where's the work on the 25 county chiefs? We don't have it. Milda asked me questions on what did the county chiefs know of what's happening in Kaunas. And how am I supposed to know? Yeah? You Lithuanians should find out, bloody hell. Archives are full. Yeah, archives are full. And forget about the first 5 weeks. The killing happened from August to November. That's the crucial period, after the provisional government. The provisional government is important because it symbolizes the state, the nation. And it's about how guilty is the nation. But this is about the crime. And the many people who were involved, the Lithuanians who were involved then, from August to November, those are the ones we need to look at. And we haven't looked at that. A bit at mobile police units, yeah? But all the stuff in each county, which there is, yeah, and it's empty. There are a few drops here and there. Yeah? Even the central institutions, the Lithuanian Ministry of Agriculture. Where's the work on that? There's one article. There was one article when I finished the book. I'm not sure there's one now. Yeah? Where's the work on Lithuanian businesses occupying Jews, prisoners of war, and Soviet evacuees? Why is there not one work on the Soviet evacuees? There's one Soviet article on them. One. And there were 200,000 of them here in the country, 43 and 44, everywhere. 200,000 of them. Where's the work? Where's the Lithuanian work on prisoners of war? There is none. Rukšėnas, Kazis Rukšėnas, writing his PhD in the 60s, he was refused, with argument it's too factologisch. It is too factologisch by the Soviets. And in this book, everything is, a lot of it is there already, but it's just 4 volumes. There's one in the Mažvydas Biblioteka. He gave me, I could copy one. Yeah, and only very few Arunas has read it and exploited it very well for his work as well. Yeah, so there's lots to do, lots and lots. Yeah, where's the work on Lithuanian peasant, the provincial, the countryside under the Germans, the peasants? Where's all that? Yeah, so away from the, and not with the question. Are we now guilty as Lithuanians, or are we not guilty? No, in a way, we are all guilty. I don't know. No, but we need real pictures of real historical pictures of what was happening. Yeah. The vast the very short. Image I gave from what the structures were like during the phase of the annihilation. There's so many things we don't know. Yeah, because also a question of languages. I must admit, and I was supposed to mention that already earlier. Languages is a major barrier here. Yeah, I could write such a long book, and not a bad book, because I can work in those languages. I can work in Lithuanian, I can work in Yiddish, yeah, I can work in Hebrew, I can work in Russian. I don't have Polish, yeah. Polish and Lithuania, do we have good works on the Poles? We're just talking about Lukiškis, yeah, about the Poles who were murdered there under the Germans. What do we know about them? Poles know about them. What do we know about them? Why don't we know about them more?
Yeah, and all that. So there's once you start, I mean, lots and lots and lots and lots. Yeah. So what I did, I just scratched the surface. Actually, I just scratched because I did everything somehow, but everything very short. So once you will have the opportunity to read it, at some point, the English translation is now halfway through. Yeah, but it's going to take years for the second to finish, and then to edit it and everything. So it's going to be another 5 years, I guess, till that comes out. But it's only the surface. It's only the surface. I would never. It's not the best researched. It's the most written about. I'm not sure about the best researched. I'm not sure about the best researched. Yeah, future of Holocaust studies. I have no idea. No, don't ask me about the future. I have no idea. No? If you would have asked me in 2005 what would be the state of research in 2020, would I have known about, I don't know, no? This turn and that turn, this turn and that turn? No, I wouldn't have. Yeah. So I don't know. What I know is once you really start learning about something, it's not that you have, I got my answers and I can go on, but there are so many rooms we haven't even entered yet. That's more my impression, actually, when we look at it. I'm pleading constantly for relating different fields to each other, not to insulate, Verinselung, not to put on an island all the differences. Ghettos. Do we have stories of ghettos within their city? We treat them as islands. Yeah? Vilnius, here, this city. Now, do we have a work on Vilnius, the ghetto in Vilnius, in the city Vilnius? No, we don't. We place the ghetto on the moon, yeah, and then write about it. And that's true for all the thousands of ghettos we have. We have 1,100 ghettos we have.
What about gender studies? Do you think gender studies would be helpful studying the Holocaust?
Gender studies is fundamental for everything. Actually, yeah? Not just for everything. Our whole history is one of genders. Yeah? From beginning, from Adam and Eve, yeah? There's a gender problem there between the two, yeah? Till today. All the way through. We need gender studies, but not as a special category, yeah? But as sort of a fundamental approach. Yeah? Humans are always men and women, and now even the third, transgender. Yeah? But basically, we have to be aware that we are writing about men mostly. Yeah? And then now Wendy Lau has written about women, it's like a sensation. Yeah? But it's only a very tiny group, actually.
Do you follow the work of young Lithuanian historians who, let's say, defended their PhD? I don't know, you mentioned Rukšėnas, but do you know the work of Alfredas Rukšėnas? Or like memory work by Zigmas Vitkus on Paneriai, so on? Or is this kind of basically the work that, because it has not been translated, or do you follow this work? And what do you think about it? Do they do interesting work? Do they go kind of the right direction? What is your opinion?
I don't follow the works of those people systematically. I don't. Because somehow I've done my share.
Exactly.
No? Alfreda's work I know, because I asked him to please give me, and he sent me a copy, and I used it. So I went through it, so a lot of it. Zigmas Vitkus, when he was still busy with Paneriai, yeah, we were on close exchange actually, and we are sort of proofreading each other in a way. Yeah. So it's kind of arbitrary, and not in a systematic, because I'm not in. I don't want to. I don't want. I'm not in the position to. Need to know everything about. No, and to read Lithuanian is for me. It's work. No? To read Hebrew is more work. Yeah, but Lithuanian it's also quite already a nightmare. Yeah. Please. But I do, and I'm.
Thank you.
Just a second. Very often I think that the young Lithuanian historians are lacking courage. Yeah, sort of they stick very much to sort of this levels of like in Soviet times, kind of this level of descriptive. No? Now where to build arguments. No? There's still room for improvement here. No? How to build arguments. How do you do that? Yeah, and sort of this, and to, like when I teach in Eastern Europe, it's very often, am I right or wrong? Am I right or wrong? No, if some, or in Israel as well. No, I just for months I taught in Haifa this master class, yeah, on Nazi. And is this true or not true? No, is this right or wrong? And from Turkish side or from Albanian side or from the Ukrainian side as well, so Russian side as well. Asking, but these are questions historians would not ask. No, so I would ask, what is it based on? No, and how do you present your evidence in order to build an argument? It's always this. Yeah, and this is, it takes another a few decades, I would say, till that is fully developed. Yeah. But we as teachers, it's our task to do that. Really, it is. Please.
Okay, so actually this is not a question, but in the beginning of this talk you said you would encourage discussion, so I wanted to share some thoughts. I'd like to go back to what Sergey said about the problem when we have nationalists who, for their political or their own career interests, make nationalistic statements that in a way falsify, or let's say they bend history around the Holocaust, and we don't get pushback from professional historians in Lithuania. I don't know why. It could be fear of going through rejection by the society. It could be fear of having an adverse reaction to their career. But what happens is when there is no pushback, it empowers people on all levels of society to use false historical information to affect and control the lives of others. So for example, when you have a handful of English professors who are following some of these nationalist statements, they feel very strongly justified in the decisions that they're making. So I think that it is a problem when we don't have historians pushing back against politicians and other publicists who play with history and play with very personal and very hurtful parts of history. So that's one thing. And it almost, so that's one point. And what you were saying about the descriptiveness and and that lack of critical thinking skills and lack of courage, I think that's also related to the society that historians who do have enough security in institutions as members of Lithuanian government institutions and have the security of a career, if they would find the courage to really push back against a lot of the white noise that we get in the press and the media, that would empower other levels of society in an interdisciplinary way for more truth-seeking to occur, and to those who do truth-seek to feel more confident and more protected within the society. I just wanted to
Thank you for that. I would like to thank everybody for participating. I have to admit openly, probably both Christoph and myself, the organizers, we were expecting a bit larger audience. I believe that this discussion will go online via YouTube, so it will be available for the others. I believe that the more discussions of the sort, the better for society, especially for healthy society, healthy debate, different opinions, okay, and the debate without political engagement is always, I believe, is a sign of healthy debate. So thank you again very much. Thank Christoph for coming. I would like to invite you also, since Christoph and both Ruta and Christoph are here, they brought the book, and if you would like to have this book signed by the authors, please, okay, whatever you didn't like, send me an email, please. I am the one to blame. Thank you.